First up, our students, our schools, Lamprey River Elementary School Read Across America, Terry.
We have Miss White, we have librarian, and we have a bunch of students here tonight. Well, not a bunch, but a few.
Yeah, less than last year.
Before we start, I try to do this before we start. If any parents want to take pictures and or videos, they can come up to either side of us so that they have a view. If not, that's all right also.
I'm Heather Conley. I am the library media specialist at Lamprey River, and before February break, we celebrated Read Across America. So I have two fabulous second graders here to help talk about it. And this is a microphone.
Hi, my name is Layden, and I am a second grader in Miss Robinson's class. Hi, my name is Willow, and I'm also a second grader in Miss Robinson's class. Week before February break, Lamprey River celebrated Read Across America. We did lots of fun activities around the author and illustrator of Mo Willems. A very fun activity we did using finger flashlights to make reading more fun. I like that they light up the book and they are even strong enough to shine on the ceiling. Our class got blue finger flashlights and we got to bring them home. I enjoyed reading for the readathon, which is our library fundraiser. I read 305 minutes in 2 weeks. My favorite activity was in the readathon and sponsored is Wildlife Encounters. I really like the Arctic Fox. Our class won the door decorating competition for second grade. We used the Mo Williams book, Should I Share My Ice Cream, as inspiration. At the end of all Piggy and Elephant books, Mr. Williams hides his character, a pigeon. Everyone in our class made their own ice cream cone, and we hid it on the pigeon on our door. On Thursday, each class got a guest reader. Dr. Waldron from the middle school came to visit us. He read the book, The Serious Goose. I liked meeting my mom's boss. Made funny faces while he was reading. A new favorite Read Across America activity, like when Miss Conley brought in a cart of books and everyone got to pick out one to keep. I picked Sounds on the Floor. And I picked out the book, Mia May. Aiden and I practice on Friday, our class visited Mrs. Coughlin's kindergarten class. Willow and I read to a couple of kindergartners as Piggy and Elephant. My favorite part was that Willow and I got to read together. And my favorite part was reading when you're using a pen. We wanted to thank all of the grown-ups at LRES for such a fun week of reading. Thank you for letting us to share about our activities.
That is all we have.
Questions? Go ahead, Joe.
Are you sure you guys are in second grade? You guys did an excellent job, excellent reading and speaking to us.
Anybody else? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Especially for the parents for bringing your children in.
Thank
They
you.
did a super job. Right, next up, recognition. We'd like to recognize Cindy Bennett for her 3 years on the board. Cindy's not seeking re-election, so this is her last meeting with us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you.
And a blast.
Like yesterday, wasn't it?
Yeah.
All right, public input. Anybody for public input? All right, I'll hold it open for 30 minutes, and if anybody comes along, we'll allow them to speak at that time. Next up, student representative to school board. First up.
So I just want to welcome back all the Rams students after our little vacation. It was very nice and well needed. So our students have been very excited. We've heard prom is coming up, so tickets are now for sale during lunch. And now you can register for spring sports as well. So I know a lot of students are looking forward to that and the warmer weather coming up.
And there's a formal winter formal?
Yes, winter formal host.
Friday night, right?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you. What's the prom tickets this year?
$75. Every year.
Each? Yeah.
That's not per couple, that's each.
Mm-mm,
That's, yeah.
that's each year. Bell Winery.
Yep. Next up, elementary committee. We have representatives from the elementary committee here to present their the recommendations that was board asked. Oh, hey, Cindy, the both of them, right? They're setting up, as the board knows, I got into this committee about halfway through. They had already done quite a bit of the work already. So I didn't steal any more of their thunder, so I'll let them present. You're doing fine. You want me to continue?
Hi, everybody. My name is John Duford. I'm president of Raymond and parent of currently my daughter's in kindergarten at LRES, and we got two more younger than her who are gonna come up in the system. So I'm gonna just kind of explain the first 10 slides or so and then pass off to Todd. And Todd, you're welcome to interrupt or correct me at any time if you feel necessary. So yeah, you can go ahead and take a look up here. So these are the members that came together to meet regularly. So myself, I was chair, Annie Vincent, Andy next to me here, Danny, I don't see her, Lori, Leanne, Amy, and Todd and John. We met every couple of weeks or so, depending on weather, holidays, things like that. So the charge that was given to us by the school board you have up here, essentially to figure out what to do with either a new construction of an elementary school, to refurbish it, and to pick what location we would do that in if we were going to build a new elementary school. So some of the things we looked at were the population projections, 5 to 8 years, the demographics of the town, what the core capacity would be needed for the building. And then down the bottom, there's what I've discussed. So some of the options were to remodel, refurbish, build on the current site where the current elementary school is, or on a new site. So those are the things that we took a look at initially. So the things that we talked about as far as completing the charge, where we met, Todd took us on a tour. I had never seen the buildings personally before, so that was pretty helpful contrast between the current elementary school and the middle school in this building. So we looked at, we took a good look at the numbers and demographics, what it would take to build or renovate, feasibility, long-term benefits, what would be best for the students and the faculty, overall health and wellness of the community. So one of the first things we looked at was population projections. We got this data from the New England School Development Council. So one of the things we did notice was that there was a steady decline in historical and projected enrollments for K through 12, such shift enrollments. From 2025 to 2035 for K through 3, the projections declined from 333 to 309. And then 4 to 8, they also declined. But it does not take into consideration children born in Raymond who do not enroll. And that was a pretty significant stat, that there's approximately a 20% drop in students from birth to kindergarten. So we have, births in Raymond, but those births, 20% of them don't enroll in kindergarten in Raymond. There's some assumptions about that or speculations, but it's certainly interesting as to ask us why there's people, 20% of the people either want to homeschool or don't want to enroll in Lamprey River Elementary School. So this is basically where the data is coming from. This is just a graph showing that starting in 2015 to up to 2035 with the different grade levels. So you'll see from about 2024 to 2035, it's fairly steady, but you see the decline that they're talking about. This is the birth and K enrollment data.
John, could you wait 1 minute?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, just a quick question. You said the 20% drop was kids who aren't going to kindergarten.
Yeah.
Do we find that they just don't go to kindergarten and come for first grade, or is it just they don't come at all?
They don't.
They don't enroll at all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And actually, I don't know if it's on here, but we found that once they do enroll, they stay
Okay.
in the system, like
Right.
not just elementary school, but the whole. Yeah,
Okay.
it's just getting that initial, "Do I want to enroll in the school" is the hurdle.
Perfect. Thank you.
So we also looked at some of the projections. So the 5-year average of the percentage of students that move from one grade to the next in the following year, which is what I just discussed, a weighted average, and then you can go to the next one. It's kind of showing what this is talking about. So this is just projected enrollments. And this is based on some other information too, if you want to go to the next slide. Yeah, so this is more about the new construction that the town is facing. So the residents in the town, according to the MES DEC, there are approximately 185 single-family building permits issued from 2020 to 2024. I'm sure you've noticed a lot of development lately. 2 multifamily permits in that time span. According to the town's director of planning development, there's also quite a few proposed building projects that may impact student population. And we did discuss that just because that there's housing developments doesn't necessarily mean that there's births associated with that. But it's still a factor to consider. So, you want to talk about this?
Yes, I will take care. All right, so as John said, we keep hearing about all these developments in our town, so much building, so much building, so much building. So the facts are here in front of you. This is from the town planner. We have under construction. You can see we have up there that estimates to approximately 150 units or houses, and then proposed building projects. You can also see they spread out throughout the town, and those estimated up to approximately 790 or so units. And as John mentioned, we know that houses don't make babies, but we also know that houses could impact the amount of students coming to the school. So we want to keep that in the back of our mind as we're planning for the future, even though the demographics do show a steady decline. If we were to take this into consideration and also think of these 40% of students who are not making it to the school district, this could have a very large impact on our population. So one major thing we looked at was the core capacity. So the core capacity, as most of you probably know, basically the maximum number of students that the building can hold and still sustains the program. So all the areas in the building, the common areas like the gyms, the cabs, all those places are designed around this core capacity number. The whole building is basically designed around it. This is just the number of students in the building. Doesn't take into consideration staff or other building users who may be in there. So this is our current situation. You can see here, it estimates out to 442, which again is a lot lower, you might think, than the core capacity we're looking at designing to, because we're designing to a 550 student core capacity. But again, it takes into consideration that 20%. It takes into consideration people who or students who may come back. And it gives us a little bit of fluctuation through the years if something were to change within right. So the 3 options considered. We spoke with this little remodel refurbish, or expand the elementary school kind of where it is. I'll go over the pros and cons of each, but this option has the least upfront cost. Renovations cannot happen while the students are in session, pretty obvious. The students are in the building, you can't be tearing it apart and redoing while they're there. The design and functionality of this type of renovation would be very much handcuffed by the current design of the building, if that makes sense. So it's a renovation, and redesign, would have to add an addition of some kind, but the renovation would be kind of held within that box we have now. So build a new elementary school on the high school site. This also was talked about quite a bit in town. The high school site is very vast in acreage, but the usable space or usable buildable space is not on the high school site. It's a terrible site for building. This was investigated by a couple of committees over the past, as well as Barker Architects who we've worked with in the past. There's just not a lot of acreage. The one spot that is the most favorable to the left of the driveway you pull up, would not feel it's big enough for an actual school building, as well as the parking, proper fields and things like that. So the site itself is just not feasible. Building on a new elementary school on the current elementary school site, this is the option we recommend. It's the most feasible and provides the best overall long and short-term solutions for the students and the taxpayers will be that with their forward. So here we go. This shows you the elementary school site. If you guys can see that from up there, this darker area, you probably can't tell what it is. This is the existing building, kindergarten area over here. And this is just a potential spot for the building. We'll get into why we chose that spot. I just want to draw your attention to the yellow lines here. These are the property lines. And then this over here, this yellow line is the actual Old Manchester Road. So if you can kind of orient yourself, that's what we're looking at. So as you are well aware, the elementary site is very limited due to the river, the flood zone, the way it's positioned on the site with Old Manchester Road. So it is also not the best site, but we feel it's the best option. For that reason, or for a couple of reasons, one of them is the new building could potentially be out of the flood zone. It's a little difficult to see, I apologize, but this dark black line in here is the flood, under your flood zone we talk about all the time. So you can see this potential location is just about all the way out of it, and with some different configurations could potentially be 100% out of the flood zone. Obviously, the area where the building currently is would become parking, fields, bus loops, all different things, playgrounds, things like that. It would retain positive aspects of the site, right? So we complain about the flood zone, but the river, the nature trail, those things are something you just can't get at every single site. So it has its flaws, but it also has its definite benefits when we try to teach young kids. All right, so con, we talked about where the building could potentially go to get it out of the flood zone. One con is it's very close to the abutter, which happens to be the town of Raymond. So there may be an easement, there may be some land swap, there may be something that's needed there. So it's not clean and dirty. We have to get into that down the road. Obviously, the building that you saw, in case we like, is closer to the road, which has its negative points. Obviously, the students running, students in the building, closest to the road, with little ones is never the best option. Pro, obviously, everything would be new and energy efficient, right? It's not from scratch, we make the best we can make it, and everything's done. The building would potentially be out of the flood zone, which we talked about. Pro con, we said, the building construction could take place. So why is it a pro? Because we can still have kids in the building. It's kind of a con because we built a school on a different site. The students, staff, parking, the parents would not be impacted. So it's kind of a con that we're going to be a construction on the same site. But the pro is the students can still be using the building. So it's kind of up in the air. And those of you who are around from middle school, we did this with the middle school. Difficult, but I told the committee, the staff are a much happier place because they know they're doing it, they're really good. So they tend to flex a little more than they would on a typical day. That makes sense. Another pro, all the problems we solved, not left under control. We have a building from 1976, has its issues, has its underground issues, has its all problems we all know about. None of it's a secret. We would renovate, and when you renovate, as you all know, you renovate always to a point of what's economically feasible. So there may be some lingering issues we thought that maybe left over from renovation. Like I said, we'd be handcuffed with the design. So we felt that was a pro with a new site. We don't have to worry about any of that. There's no leftover issues from the elementary school, including its location in the flood zone, all things like that. All right, so these are some estimates we worked with Barker Architects. we worked with in the past to get some kind of general idea of where we're at numbers wise, because again, this is one of those areas, like the building in town, we hear these rumors of it's gonna be X amount of dollars or this and that. There's some crazy figures since COVID, so this kind of gets us in the ballpark, grounds us a little bit as to where we are. So we'll touch on it real quick. So site development, we're looking at about 3.3 million, general construction, and this is, as you can see, about an 80,000 square foot building at $400 per square foot. About 30, almost 32 million. Administrative contingency, about 5 million. Fees, services that are included in this, 3 million. Brings us to a total cost of 43.8 million. So that's a huge number, right? We're not comfortable seeing that number, especially that's what we pay for middle school, but this is kind of a reality of where we're at. When we think into the eligible building aid at about 14.15 million, leaves us a total bond of 28.9. So that's great and everything, but that's a snapshot as to where we are today. This has a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of moving parts with state budgets, state funding. The building aid process is competitive. There's talk about possible moratorium of building aid. There's also talk about building aid going up because the square footage cost of building aid is at now doesn't match the current 400 square foot. It's much lower than 200. So this is a moving target, but this is a snapshot of what it may be today. Kind of a reality check. For any questions? You want to go over anything more depth?
Joe, Cindy, go ahead.
I was just wondering, with that number, because I've never been, well, I remember when the junior high went up, but I wasn't as in tune to it. So what does that look like for payment? Have you broken that down?
No, we didn't get that far. That wasn't part of the chart, but
Okay.
The middle school approximately was $14 million 20 years ago. And the payments we had were ballpark $1 million a year. Just to give you a sense. That was 20 years ago, but again, just gives you a flavor as to what the size is. We're talking probably bonding twice that. So,
So that would be like, what, like 3 million a year or?
well, double everything, it would be probably 2 million. But again, that's just what happened 20 years ago doesn't mean that's what's going to happen down the road, but that's just what it is.
Yeah,
And there's a different funding mechanism now than there was 20 years ago. So there's all kinds of variables there too. And I'll try not to dive deeper than that, but. Joe?
First off, I'm sure people wish they went with the old middle school, elementary school 24 years ago or about. That would have been nice. Would have been about half the price for 2 schools it is for the 1 school. With the school, and I know there's ways we can get around things. I mean, if we had to get portables and put them somewhere, if we wanted to build somewhere, so it's pushed back a little bit, it would probably be on the same pad or close to around where the pad is now for the elementary school. Could you raise it up so you're not in the flood zone? Well, you'd be in the flood zone, but you'd be at a higher level.
raise up the existing.
Not the existing one. If you built a new one, you just raise it up.
Just on it. You can definitely raise it up. I think kind of current ordinance now is 18 inches above on your floodplain. That's what we have to get to not have a variance. And that's part of the reason why we chose that part of the site, because it's already elevated. There's a couple of big hills over there, but the whole part of the site's elevated. So, but yes, of course, you can bring it up. We just got to take into consideration, you can't just plop the building 18 inches high. You have to kind of make sure it's created an ADA and all that kind of stuff. But yes, the answer is yes, you could do whatever you want with the site. It's just money.
And just to add that, and that's one of the things that the committee talked about during for the presentation, is that, you know, the location that we're looking at is part of it would be in the flood zone. However, as Todd mentioned, we have to build that regardless of where it is 18 inches above because it's in the flood zone. So in essence, we would have to meet the building code of Raymond. Go ahead, Tom.
So do you know how far below it is? Like how far would you have to go to get to that 18 inches above? Like 3 feet, 6 feet?
I don't know what you're asking.
So we have to be 18 inches above the high water mark, right?
100-year flood.
Yes.
I think what you're asking is how
How
much
far
do we
down?
have to dig?
Yeah, yeah.
on the left side of that driveway.
Well, how much would you have to increase it?
I believe the current concrete floor is 6 inches above it, so that's gonna give you an idea, so we don't be talking a little bit more above it, so it's not like be there by the time we move over on the site. It's site naturally.
Slopes up, yeah.
Yeah. And we have to take out 2 hills, those hills, let me tell you, I've already did those hills now. Those hills have to come down a lot, or we could obviously use new
Spread it out.
So you drive into the rear access roads, give you a point of reference to the rear parking lot, and look to your left.
Yeah, it's
Those
big.
two big knobs that are sitting there. Those are what we're talking about.
Right, Cindy.
So does this include, what would you be doing with the old building? Would that be just demolished or?
Yes, this, what we talked about in our plan, in our presentation, includes demolishing the building and making fields, parking lots, playground area with the current footprint.
So is that included in that price?
Yes. The demo is relatively inexpensive compared to everything else.
Yeah, that building won't take much.
There's not much inside there. Because
One little
a lot
shot.
of big deals you think, I mean, to a regular homeowner, it's an issue, but to big company, it's not.
Anybody else? What we should do is, do we want to move forward with this proposal? Understanding that if we think we wanted to go forward and get on the list as soon as possible, the list being the state for the school building aid, we would have to have something ready for the state early April, right? I don't remember it's April 1st, I think. When I say early, I guess it's not much earlier than that.
Mhm.
We would have to get going. From my perspective, I don't think it would be wise for us to rush to do that. Because right now, there are too many unknowns as to what the building would look like. What the committee put up there is, in essence, a rectangle, 80,000 square foot, not at 80,000 square foot. Some of it is, I'm assuming we took into consideration, some is going to be on the second floor and majority of it would be on the ground level. But if we make modest modifications, my understanding is the state would say, okay, you have to then reapply again to the footprint that we have if we change things from our intent. That's my understanding. Is that,
Yeah, it's a little.
it's complicated. I'm trying to,
Here with the state, yeah, they say if you kind of keep the same, I think we changed it footprint anyway, yes, you have to reapply. You keep the footprint, make some minor adjustments inside, right?
because what they're saying is you ask for these things and that's what we're blessing, we being the state. If you make modifications for it, then in essence, it's a different plan. So for me, I believe what we should do is go forward with the project, but not try to get something done for April. But whenever the next go around would be. That's my view. Go ahead, Joe.
Maybe you had mentioned it, but I didn't hear it. Was there a gym attached in the building?
This proposal includes a gym, yes. Okay.
I assume also a calf, or would it be a combo like we have today?
No.
Okay, sorry.
Good questions.
Just- Oh, I had another one and I lost it. It was about the funding. Do we know, is it a once a year process with the state or does it happen several times a year?
One time, is my understanding. And what happens is,
Based on priority for the community.
right, and for example,
Yeah.
there is a list today for building aid already established.
Yeah.
And you get put on it, and the people that are on the list stay on the list. I don't remember if Kyle said they get, if you could potentially move down or you stay where you're at. No, you can't go down. Can't go down. Okay, I couldn't remember.
Once a lot, the new names go below.
Is it, oh, sorry, is it, I mean, this may be silly, but like if there's 5 schools ahead of us, or if we're number 6 on the list, as the others get funded, do we naturally rise up or do the other folks maybe get put ahead of us?
So we naturally rise up as well as if we're number 6 and there are other schools will listen and they say, okay, number 1, you're getting money, number 1's town. We voted no for it, then number 1's gone, it goes to number 2, then it goes to number 2 and they voted we don't want to do it. The money can't trickle down. It's not likely that they could move down.
But number 1 and number 2 would stay in their spot for 3 years. So if you're
The
number 1,
next year you stay
if
number
you're
one.
number 1 and your town says no, number 2 moves to number 1. Next year, you're still number 1 and the town says yes, then you would get your money.
You get it first.
So that's a kind of a floating. Once you're established a number, you're there. Even if the town says, no, you can't move, you might move up, depending on who in front of you does stuff, but you won't. If, let's just say they funded number 6, they say 1 through 6, and we said no to, number 7 would get it, but we would stay number 6.
And if we apply and then have to reapply, that drops us down.
Start over.
Start over.
Start over.
Your
Yeah,
placement
that
is.
wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah, so that's why my belief is we shouldn't try to rush to it, because if we make a mistake, we're gonna put ourselves further back than we already are.
Well, I have a question though.
Go ahead.
If we start now and we're on the list, even if we waited until next year, we're still gonna be at the bottom of the list, even if we have to reapply this year from the following this year, wouldn't we?
Well, in theory, yes. However, again, the problem is we don't have a plan that is defined enough in my mind. And I think we would need to outlay some more money to get an architect to get an idea as to what would really work in that location. Because we're kind of confined in that location. It's not like we're looking at a 10-acre lot and it's all flat and golden and everything. We've got to look at, okay, it needs to fit in this location. It needs to have so many classrooms, the gym and everything else. My concern is if we try to rush it in the next 26 days or so, I think we'll hurt ourselves by doing that, because the chances of us having to resubmit are probably more likely, because we don't know what we don't know. I don't know if I'm explaining myself enough, but in essence, we would hope we'd have more defined what the building would look like than what we have now. And it's no fault of the committee. It just, we didn't have time to do that with a few months that we had. And it wasn't actually part of the charge, so.
I don't think you would find an architect to do it.
Couldn't get an appointment within a month.
So, Kyle's working with fast. We can jump through all the hoops. We can. It's a ton of work on our end. Like if we every day, we can do it. It's a ton of work on the architect's end. It's a lot of money up front. And I kind of feel like once we sign up with an architect for this point, we're kind of locked into it. I believe that I want to start probably anybody, but to rush it and not go out to bid and get different options. And we looked at what Kyle has, but there could be better options out there and maybe other things. I think we waited since try to get a new school for all the years, right, to at least give me a plan moving forward, do it the right way, make sure we follow all the balls 100% correct. Have time to digest everything, make sure we didn't miss anything. Move forward and do it right. So once we're on the list, we're solid with that. I would hate for us to get on the list and then be trying to backdoor into it and say, oh, how much can we be changing before we get caught up in it? I don't know. It's just my take. I'd like to make it 100% correct before we. And it's, like I said, it's a process to do. It's not like it used to be when we did the middle school. You draw a picture on a piece of paper, send it to the state, and they say thanks. It could be huge money to even get going on the project side.
It's gonna take some PR too. We'll have to get out there and
Yes.
push it.
Yep, I'm gonna say this too, and I can't believe I'm saying this too, because I'm a huge person for sports and all that. Instead of going a full-size gym, maybe we go 3/4 or a half, because in my mind, that's gonna be a place for first and second graders, even if they're using it after school. I don't know too many first and second graders that need to run up and down a full-size court. But if you can go this way, create the difference. I don't want to have shared space. I don't think we can share the gym and the calf. That doesn't work. But however, when we take a look at the gym, I think there needs to be a study done with the rec department and how much more space do we need? And I'm going to be brutally honest too. Moving to 4th grade, then what do I do with that space at the middle school? You know, I know it's great, but you know, if we decide to, and when we start to do cost and what the town can afford, if we do move a grade out, you know, I'm guessing you're going to save one whole wing. Well, one whole wing is not just $100,000. It could be substantial. So I think that, knowing what we went through with the energy project, I think we just need to be cognitive and mindful. And I think I would agree that we probably need a new school, but I think, and they did a fantastic job, but I think we might want to just say, okay, let's bring this committee to do a little more research and digging and say, okay, where are we at space wise? And, you know, I know there's questions too with behavior programs. All right, well, let's put a behavior I'm just throwing stuff that's deep against the wall.
Yeah.
We might say, oh, we could take that fourth grade ring and commit its own little autism school or whatever, start tuitioning people in. I don't know. I think those are a lot of other conversations that need to happen. That need to happen in less than 3 weeks time. Does that make sense?
No. Yeah, I mean, yes, what you're saying makes sense, but no, I agree. I don't think it makes sense to rush. And I'd be interested in seeing some of the differences in the numbers. Like, is a half a size gym significantly cheaper? Do we get other room? Like, is it worth
50 grand, it's not worth it. You know what I'm saying?
It gives us time to develop that plan and really be mindful, put it out to bid, make sure that we're not just grabbing the first numbers.
I think the gym at the middle school was what, 7,000? And that's what we were looking at in this project. So it's a 7,000, which is
Good size.
includes space for bleachers. Thank you, that technical word, bleacher.
Oh, yeah.
So space that isn't needed for an elementary school. But again, it's just something we use as a placeholder, just like a lot of the other things. So I think Terry brings up a good point in that there are other things that, you know, we'll have to look at. And that's why 3 or 4 weeks isn't going to do. I don't think we do justice to it. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, with the gym and stuff, I mean, when I grew up in Tewksbury, we had several elementary schools and they didn't have they had a full-size court, but they didn't have a full-size gym. Like you didn't have, there wasn't a lot of room for parents to stand around and stuff like that. So.
This gives us time to look.
I had a full-size gym. The Mary D. Altabist.
Right. Any other questions or comments? Because I don't have, interestingly enough, we don't have action on here, but I think we should. So if we can get a motion to amend the agenda to include action on the elementary committee.
I'll make a motion to amend the agenda to include action for the elementary committee.
Get a second?
Second.
Second by Steve. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. So I think what we need to do is yay or nay what we want to do here on, do we go forward with the committee's recommendation of a new school at the elementary school site? And if that's the case, that's what we want to do, then what is the timing of, you know, when do we want to go in front of the state? Do we want to go in front? I'm hearing no right now, but I think just in motion, get a motion to that effect to do it for next year. I think would make everything so that everybody's upfront as to what the expectations are.
I'll make a motion to charge the elementary committee to look into options for the elementary school and looking at a designer.
We can get a second. I'll second it for discussion. I don't think that's what really we should be doing. I think it's more about getting an architect because we know what we need. I think, right? The committee came up with things that we know we need. And then going out to bid and getting an architect that way.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know. I think if we find that a committee is needed, then we could ask for the committee to reconvene. But right now, I don't think it's at this point necessary. That's just my view. I don't know what the committee, because I think the first steps are going out to bid for an architect, finding out how much that's going to cost, finding money for that, and then we have direction already from the committee. And then going forward from there. If we find that we need to have more direction or more input, different input, then I think that's the time we would look at that. That's my view.
So you really don't want action on the committee's part then?
Not at this point. Because I don't think until we get to a better lay of the land as to architect, and then we have some direction from the committee as to, okay, how many classrooms, you know, the conversation about, we know we want a cafeteria by itself. We know we want a gym by itself. The question now is what size gym? And many of the other things are dictated by in the core capacity. Everything, a lot of those other things are dictated by that.
You want me to amend because we amended the agenda to have action for the elementary committee. Do you want me to?
Well,
amend it to-
Well, you want to take action on the recommendation,
It's the agenda item, right?
So just the recommendation.
right? You want to take action on the recommendation,
That's correct.
not action for the committee.
That's correct.
So, I will say, I guess it's I don't know if they want to be, but they put, the folks on the committee put a lot of work, and I don't know if anyone would want to continue to be involved with that process. Obviously, they would leave that open for folks. So you're not necessarily saying dissolve the committee, just we don't, okay. But whether or not we want to take the suggestion of new building on the existing site, with the basic parameters we have, but to take the next steps to go out to bid to get an architect and give us some more details. That's sort of what you're.
In essence, yes.
Okay.
And obviously an architect's gonna have to work with a group of individuals. It's just a matter of who we determine with the help of the administration as to who those people are that would be working with the architect to work out those details. Go ahead, John.
We do have a lot of the details I think you're asking about too. We just didn't show it.
Right.
Yeah, so like each room, square footage, kitchen, all that stuff. So
Just, what happened was Kyle Barker gave us information. Okay, here's what a kitchen is, cafeteria gonna look like for the student population that you're projecting. And there were some still gray areas because of behavior programs, student service programs. I gotta say that because Jody, I don't wanna, Jody's in the house, so. But there were still things that need to be ironed out.
So then.
Well, we have the motion on floor for the committee. I would suggest we withdraw the motion.
I'll withdraw my motion.
I withdraw my second. And
It's gonna take a swing.
one more.
I'll make a motion that we accept the suggestion of the elementary school committee to go forward with building a new building on the existing site and
And then I would just stop there
and just stop. Okay,
and do one motion for that.
okay.
And if that passes, then go a different motion for the next step. I think that's so that we can make it as clean as possible.
Okay.
I'll second.
Second. Any discussion on that? All those in favor? Aye.
I'm gonna abstain.
Okay. So we've got 4 yeses and Cindy abstained, so the motion passes. The next one, Steve?
I'll make a motion that we, oh God, I don't know how to say this, continue the process by going out to bid for an architect to begin the process of design of a new elementary school.
Whatever
Whatever
is
that-
needed for the next stage, I think, right? Terry is.
Yeah, Todd,
Is that,
does that work? You've done this more than I have.
We don't need the whole committee to do that. I think we just need the board approval to move forward, get an RP to get it out.
Right. Yeah.
At some point, we'll have to come up with a building committee and people should probably have first. People at least.
Yeah.
Probably have first dibs.
Right, exactly.
Back on it at that point when we start to move forward.
okay, yeah, so the motion, just to restate, is to allow, I guess, Todd,
The
the
administration.
administration
Welcome,
to
big.
go out for bid for an architect for the project. And just leave it there.
Second. Anything you want to add, Terry?
You good? Are you good, Todd?
Yeah, I think that's enough. That'll get us going. Like I said, when we get the RFPs back, we will start the payment, look at them, and
Right.
then we can really dig in. We really can't do anything until we have architect nailed down. We've got to volunteer their time at the end, so now we're going up to it, so.
Right.
I'd just like to say thank you to the committee for all your hard work. Thank you, man.
Yeah, same. And I'm sorry, I was supposed to be with you and my schedule was just ridiculous and I could never make it. So John very graciously stepped in for me. So thank you to John too.
I wasn't gonna bring it up.
I know, I felt every time they were like, there's another meeting. I'm like, it's not a good night.
So we've got the motion to basically, ask the administration to go out and go out and bid for an architect for the, elementary school.
Yeah, Joe seconded.
Yep. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
I'm gonna abstain.
Okay. So we've got 4 yeses and it's Cindy abstention. So motion passes. Again, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all.
And, it sounds like we'll probably be coming back and asking you folks again, but your choice, obviously. So thank you for your time.
Thanks for your help.
Thank
you.
All right. Speaking of student services, we have a student service update, Joe.
Say Terry. No, I didn't know. Sorry.
Yeah, student services. Ooh.
I think this is a record.
Record for.
The 5 of us being this quiet.
Wasn't gonna say anything. I don't want to jinx it.
Everybody's tired.
The mirror, so I can't see them.
If you want to jog your notes on there or.
I have my notes. Just trying to see if I can make it.
Get a little Steve Magic there.
And I said, you want me to jump over? Oh, you got it. Oh, you're only seeing, it's,
Let me see.
See?
Boy, you just got the aura, man. Got in the aura.
I don't want to say anything.
So this evening, I'm gonna be giving a update on my normally do. I'll go over some priorities, some updates. I'm gonna continue to give you an update on the PAGS audit that we're currently in. And I'm gonna talk about some behavioral data and go into some data around restraints and seclusion. And then I'm going to end with some positive success stories. This has not changed much, but I always come in and give you typically the October 1st counts, but then I also give you where we are in current time. So this gives you all the past data from October 1st, 2015 to 2014. And you can see right now for February 2025, we are higher than we were in October. We are still around the same percentage as we've been. We always kind of go back and forth between on average 20 to 21% of students with disabilities for the general population. And there are also about 20 students in process, meaning that they're in referral. Not all 20 will be determined eligible for services, so that number will go up more, but not all 20. And right now, the state average is right around 20%.
Okay, also, I was gonna ask the state average, if we're at or above. It seems like we're kind of just right there.
Some comparisons for the last year. Again, we're pretty consistent on the last year as far as the number of students within the district that have IEPs, the number of students within the district that have 504 plans. When you combine the total, we're always right between about 29 to 30%.
I think I asked this before, and I'll ask it again because I couldn't remember the answer. We have 9%, for example, with 504s. I'm assuming some of that 9% have IEPs. Is that fair to say?
It's pretty rare to have a 504 and an IEP. You certainly can, but it's pretty rare.
Okay. John, go ahead.
Does the enrollment include people that are out of district?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So all your numbers, whether it's the 1153 and then the 30%, they all include out of district.
Correct.
Sorry, real quick.
You're out of district.
1 minute, Jody, sorry.
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 Kind of a between the two slides, same kind of, so if the out of district are on here, of the folks who are out of district, I assume those numbers are also within the percentage of IEPs.
Yes.
And in the reverse, how many, do all of the folks who are out of district have an IEP to go out? Okay.
Not all out of district are specially related, right? Some can be
You could have
any reason, right? Yeah.
Could have other, right?
something like that,
District doesn't necessarily equate to.
but it's a very small number, less than 10.
Most of your out of district students are students. by
10 is 20 total.
They're not on.
It's a pretty big percentage.
Oh, less than 10 are,
Because we can't identify.
less than 10 have an IEP. I can't give you the exact number.
So for out of district placements, again, numbers from the last year. We've gone back and forth. Again, this is very fluid for placements. You might have a court placement, for example, and that court placement might only be 6 months. It might be on the list and then off the list. You might have students that age out. You age out when you're 22 years of age. So there's various reasons that the numbers can change. So in the last year, we've gone anywhere from 18 to 22 students placed in out of districts, and we're currently at 21. And again, this does not include your charter school students and your alternative learning plan students. For the number of out of district, those students are included on total enrollment. They are not included in my figures for out of district because I count them differently. And your charter school students are less than 10. For students that receive special education services. I don't have a number for all students that go to a charter school. Some updates on some priorities. I don't plan on spending a lot of time on indicator 12 and 13 at this time. I just wanted to give you some updates. Certainly if you have questions, I will answer them to the best I can. But there are links in here in case anybody is interested in reading a fact sheet about the indicators to better understand them. I did touch upon indicator 13 a year ago at the March presentation that I did for student services. So if you're interested in refreshing kind of what indicator 13 is, you could refer back to the previous presentation that I provided. Indicator 13 is really looking at transitions for students. So it's students typically 14 years of age and older, and looking at transitioning them from school-based services to what they're going to do after school. Last year I presented because we were at 100% compliance.
And this year, we are not 100% compliance, and this is one of those indicators that you are required to be at 100% or there are findings. If there are findings, that means we have to do a corrective action plan, which includes training. Our mistakes were careless, but now we do have to write a corrective action plan and provide training. So I'm in the works of fixing what we can, writing what we can, planning what we can, doing some trainings. And again, it was just careless mistakes. Indicator 12 looks at early childhood transitions. And what this is ensuring that any student that's receiving services through early childhood interventions through the state, that they get identified, found eligible, and have an IEP in place before the student turns 3 years of age. It is the district's responsibility if the student is identified as having a disability to figure out how to provide services to students once they are 3. So again, this was some careless mistakes. So now we're in a corrective action plan for this. This is also one where it's 100% where you don't pass. And things that I think have confused some individuals is that, you know, student might turn 3 on a Saturday. So people in their head think, oh, I'll start the IEP on a Monday. That's when the kid's going to come to school and start school. The IEP itself still has to start by that 3rd birthday, but the services don't start until that Monday or a later date. So again, just careless mistakes, but now things that we're in the process of showing the state that we are working on improving. And these are things that the federal government monitors the state on, so the state monitors all the districts on. I am continuing to work on the PAGS audit, which is the program approval and general supervision monitoring. I will say PAGS because it's much shorter. The next slide is going to give you an update specifically on where we're at with the PAGS audit. As part of the PAGS audit, and also just something I've been trying to do, we have just updated all of our forms. A lot of them have previously been updated. We had to make a couple small changes for the audit. And then one of the lingering things that was still there was there's eligibility determination sheets that you use when looking at the 14 different categories that you might identify as a student in. And there wasn't really a simple place on the form to sign. So you couldn't really tell if the parent was in agreement or not in agreement, and you had to do a separate form to indicate it. So we added lines to the form so that it's simple and clear. And then we are in the beginning stages of looking at extended school year programming. Positions have been posted on the website for the DPA members watching that are looking for employment, although right now we are not hiring too many people because we're still trying to figure out student needs, but I did want to get out there and post it. We're doing things a little bit differently this year for extended school year programming. We used to have different programs. We're still going to have programs. We're going to have a preschool program. We're going to have a program for our students in our self-contained program. So we're going to have a K-5 program and then a 6 through 12 program. We had those last year. And I think I previously mentioned we're going to look at a service delivery model instead of having the other program. So for students that might have specific learning disabilities, in the past, they would come for 3 hours, Monday through Thursday for 4 weeks. And what we noticed is for some of the students, they might only have a couple goals they need to work on. And then they were kind of sitting there for the rest of the time and nobody was really sure what to be providing them because they had mastered their goals and they were only there for a very select purpose. So we're going to try to do service delivery model, which will hopefully be better for staffing. So we always struggle finding staff to teach the various classrooms. And I'm also hoping it will help with the problem we've had with the REP program over the summer and field trip days. We'll see. More in the works.
Like, what was the problem we've had with the rec program all of a sudden?
Kids want to go on a field trip instead of going to summer school.
Oh,
Oh, come on.
Yeah, that's.
That would be every day, wouldn't it?
That would be a lot, so yeah.
Families, if they're like, no, I really do want my child to the services and they don't want them to go on a field trip, their kid would come for, 3-4 hours a day, depending on the program they're in, and then the parents would have to arrange transportation and pick them up because the rec program's not even open because it's a field trip day. So hopefully this alleviates that and makes it easier on the parents and also ensures that we get the students here when we need them here so we can educate them.
Are they in the office?
That's what it sounds like. Like somebody's there.
Sounds like in there.
Way there.
Oh, they're in the hallway. The doors are just open.
Oh, this door over here.
See Terry in
What's going
action,
around?
the real thing.
I want to say the kid was looking in through the glass and saw Terry and went like, whoa.
Uh-oh, Joel.
This is a slide that you have seen before, but in case when you were perusing or community members are looking through the information that's posted on the website, I did just want to re-allow people to have the links for the audit if they want to look at it more from a state lens, and also look at the timeline. So we are in monitoring term 2. So we're right in the middle of the discovery phase, which goes through the beginning of April. But the process really is not done until July, and then it continues if there are findings that we have to correct. So it's a busy audit season.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Cindy.
So by findings, what are you talking about?
So they're looking at various components that we're doing well, things that we might not be doing well and need to work on. And they write a report based off all the different measures that they're looking at. And if there are things that we can fix. So one of the things that they do is student file reviews. If there's something they notice in a student file review that is fixable,
Student what review?
student file.
File. Okay,
File.
that's what I thought. You said.
So if there's something that's fixable, so like a careless mistake and something that we can easily fix, they'll come back and say, we found this, but we're giving you time to fix it. And then if it's something we're not able to fix in the report, they're going to say Raymond School District wasn't found compliant with this, this, and this. And they need to, you know, have a plan in place to be able to make sure that they're not making these errors moving forward.
Another question.
Go ahead.
Going backwards, like PAG's audit. Okay, I get the idea it's an audit, but who's actually auditing you? Is it the state, the
Yeah, it's the Bureau of Special Education through the state of New Hampshire.
what?
The Bureau of Special Education,
Bureau, but why is it PAG?
because it's for programming. It stands for
See?
Program Approval in General.
Okay, okay. And it's a
Federal-
state-run program.
The federal government monitors the state, and the state has to monitor the districts. So this is the state doing their due diligence so that they can report out to the federal government how the various districts within the state are doing with their special education programming.
I just came to the realization. We're on the bottom.
Well, can I ask a stupid
We
question?
can't audit anything.
Have we ever, I mean, I've done, my 25, 26 years now, I've never heard. Have you ever done one of these?
PAGS is new, but not new. It's, they've made changes.
In the past?
So they have done audits before, but they've switched the way they do audits. So there is, if you go to the first link, where it says PAG and an audit is highlighted, if you go there, you could pull up past audits that have been done for various districts. It was just called something different and they didn't look at all the same components. So it was a smaller version of what they're now doing, but they have done it for several years. I think our last one was, I want to say 17, 18, but I might be off there.
We're due.
So yes,
So they're looking at like how the staff is doing their job to help the student, or are they looking at how the student is responding to you?
they look at all of that. So they'll come out and they'll do, and this is on the next slide, but they'll come out and they do site visits. So they do observations of like all of our self-contained programs and our resource room programs where we pull students out to provide services to them. They look at credentials of staff. They look at curriculum that students are getting that have IEPs. They look at student files and make sure that students have IEPs in place when they should have IEPs in place, that students have appropriate goals within their IEPs. They look at a variety of different factors. They look at fiscal components. So they look at ensuring that our IDA grant spending, that we're spending it within the timelines that we should be spending it. There's usually like so we'll get one grant, but then that grant is good for about 26 months. So we'll still have one grant in place when we get another grant, and you're supposed to spend down the first grant that's going to expire first prior to really using most of the money in the newer grant. So they look at like, are you actually doing that? Or is there all this money sitting in the grant that's about to expire and you're using all the money in the current grant? So they look at all of those components. A lot of the work is done from the district. So we prepare things. So one of the things we have to do is a narrative that answers a bunch of questions. That's on us. But then they come and behind the scenes, they'll do like the fiscal component. There's very little that we do. They go into the system and they say, okay, Raymond is doing this or they're not doing this. So there's a bunch of different things that they're looking at. And I believe it was my last presentation that I got into greater detail on the PAGS process, that you could certainly pull up too, because I did get into a lot of this and I actually spelled out all the different things that they're looking at.
Also, Cindy?
Yes, thank you.
Tony?
I was just curious as to, do they pick like random student files to go through, or do they go through every one, or?
It's a selection. So they randomly select, but through randomly, there are still some elements. So like they're always going to pull in out of district students. So they'll randomly select from those students. They,
Cross section of what you got going on.
yeah,
basically.
and it's about, this was on the estimated, but we've got, I want to say 2 out of district files that got pulled. I think it's actually 1 out of district where we've placed, and I think it's 1 charter school. And it ranges from, I think, 3 to 4 files at every building. And then if they find something, so if they go through the student files and they notice that, they couldn't find evidence for something, you have a window of time of them coming back and saying like, did you just miss this? Did you forget to give us something? Before they come and say, we find this.
So if in this file it says he or she should be receiving a particular service and there's no record of that taking place, and that's something that they would.
Correct. They do ask for all service logs, including transportation logs.
So say that a student is in a charter school. Technically, the charter school's responsible for all their special education needs while they're in the school. I mean, we're responsible, but we're supposed to tell them this is what they need. If they don't give it, what does the state do to us, even though they're not giving the service?
So if districts have to determine with charter schools. So once you know a student with an IEP is in the charter school and the school district work together to determine who is going to be providing the services in that IEP. Some charter schools have staff on site that do provide that, and then we reimburse them. And you've heard me talk many times about the complications of the reimbursement process. But some charter schools do not actually have staff on site that can provide services. So in those instances, we have to either arrange for the child to come to school before or after charter school hours to get their services, offer them virtually, or send staff out to the charter school. So at the end of the day, it is on the district to ensure that the student is getting the services. Most charter schools we work with are able to provide the bulk of the services there. And then we just have to monitor them and make sure that they are providing the services. I get monthly bills from the charter schools. So I see on a monthly basis that they have or have not provided services. And there have been times before where the bill seems smaller than normal. And then if I look at the attendance record and the student was there, I'll reach out to the charter school to say, is there a reason why we've missed services for this child this month?
So in going with that, now they would check to see, okay, then we're paying whoever to provide the service, but then do they go to that school to make sure that they're actually providing the service, not just telling us that they are? Is there anything there, like, you know what I'm saying? Like they check it on our end, but if like an out of district student is supposed to be getting a service there and they're providing it, or they say they're providing, we're paying to, is there any follow-up on that end to make sure that they're actually doing it?
I'm not sure I totally understand. your
Um,
question.
I think what he's trying to say is if we're bringing them to the charter school, the charter school is saying that we're providing this
Right.
stuff.
Right.
But I mean, unless you go down or whoever's going down to
Right.
check it out, is the state checking it out when they do this audit? Or are they just assuming they're getting this stuff?
I mean, the state is assuming that they're getting the stuff. The charter schools do have service logs. And then they do provide us progress reports. So, I mean, I think it's usually fairly clear if they're lacking and what they're providing. In the one instance that I'm aware of over the past several years where there was a charter school that wasn't really providing what they were supposed to be providing, you heard from the parents. So, but I don't think that charter schools are often billing, saying they're providing it and not providing it. I think there are instances where the student, they do, like the student, if they pull the student and the student says, I don't want to work with you today, you know, they're still going to charge us because that was that person's time that was devoted for that student. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Did I answer that appropriate? Like, I mean, the state's not going into the charter school.
So essentially they audit us, but not them.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like,
Yeah.
they take them at their word and
Because
they're
ultimately.
big
it's
to
on
our.
us.
they're-
It's our
It's
responsibility, yeah.
And we can go to the charter schools and.
Right.
I've been to charter schools before and out of district schools, because you have the right through MOUs or contracts that we have to kind of show up when you want. And there have been times before where things are questioned and you randomly show up. That's always fun.
Great, Jody's here.
Right? She wants. All right, so some next steps for the PAGS process. Submitted tasks, we have submitted the organizational chart just for the student services. I know, Tony, you had brought that up at one point. If you're interested in seeing it, happy to share it with you.
If you could give it to, Terry, so he can get it to Friday memo. Thank you.
It looks similar to the current organizational chart, but I took out the student services and expanded upon it. The special education policies, procedures, and forms have been submitted. There are some completed tasks that I have not provided yet to the state. We have until April 6th to provide everything to them. Of that is we have to give a personnel list with licenses and certifications. One of the findings we were going to have is that some of our educators are not fully certified because they might have statements of eligibility. And while the state will provide that and allow those individuals to work with students for the audit purpose, they have to hold the actual certification. So I'm actually waiting on handing this in. I think some of our individuals like to have their certification prior to April 6th. So it's just a waiting game. So it's done, but I'm not handing it in. Some items in process is the narrative of a special education program. There's some questions regarding educational environments. We're working on those, and that's again for the self-contained programs and resource rooms. Student file reviews, we had the case manager start by doing them. They were due to the deans before February break. The deans have reviewed them. The deans and myself started to review them yesterday, but it's a lot lengthier than we thought it was. So I've now planned time to meet with each dean individually, and we're going to take the ones that they were responsible for at first glance and go through them just to ensure that what the case managers found and saw is what we also believe to be accurate, so we can figure out if we're concerned about any potential findings for student file reviews. The draft building narrative was due this past Monday. The deans and myself are going to review it next Tuesday during the part of the PD day. I have an upcoming meeting next Monday in Concord to meet with the DOE and the Parent Information Center to discuss the upcoming family listening session. So as part of this process, families are reached out to, and they're able to, come and voice concerns that they might have, positives that they have. It's all based off of questions. So, the Parent Information Center will put together specific questions that they ask, and they will gather information from parents. It is not a session that any of us are allowed to join in on, but I meet with them to kind of plan it and pick dates and how we're going to get it out to families and community members. And then we have a leadership team meeting coming up on the 18th to review the draft narratives. And really that is, we're going to put, each building's doing their own. I'm doing one for the district, and we want a larger team of individuals to make sure that it looks consistent and it's smooth from the transition of going from each building, because we're all writing different components. Everything that I just mentioned is due on April 6th, plus a few more things, but they actually haven't come to me yet. And then on the 8th of April, the Bureau of Special Education will be coming to Raymond to do classroom observations all day. So there's a lot.
Do they go to all the classrooms or just special ed?
They go to a special ed classroom. Really what they do is they actually pick students. They pick students that they want to observe as part of programs. And then they, within that, they monitor, you know, okay, in the student's IEP, they're supposed to be working on this. Is that what they're working on? Or what curriculum is the student getting? So they do see all the spaces, but they pick a couple students to pay attention to and do the bulk of their observation with, but then they also ask that you walk them around the building and show them all the different spaces that are dedicated for special education services, related services, so like OT, PT, speech, because they want to see all the spaces as well.
About how many hours do you put into this? Like,
Yeah.
Right now, this is a very large project that takes up a lot of my time. I can't tell you how many hours. I feel like that varies, but I'm gonna probably already put in 30 hours
this is, how often do they do this?
every 6 years.
Okay, so it's not,
I actually am putting in, the next 3 weeks will be the busiest. I feel like most of it's been like the prep stuff, but with all the student files and the narratives, that's a lot of the time consuming aspect. So yes, it is very time consuming, and it's primarily myself, each dean at every level, and my assistant who have been working on it. But we do have that leadership team meeting that is available to help, but really what we want most of them doing is helping us with that narrative, so that if we've missed things that we weren't thinking about, because you can also, part of the narrative is talking about how you partner within the community and how you inform parents of things. So like that doesn't have to all be special education related. It can involve open houses and other things that we do to showcase. It can be parent nights that we've had with guest speakers. So just to make sure that we haven't missed components, we're going to have that larger group look at the. Something fun. We will all take a little bit of cake. All right, so I am going to get into talking about supporting students with behavioral needs and some restraint and some inclusion data. I would respectfully ask, and this is different from how we normally do it, but I respectfully ask that if it's okay with all members of the board, I'd like to actually hold all questions till the end of the presentation on these slides, because I think a lot of the questions you might have might be answered on upcoming slides. I know that there has been a lot of recent community discussion about behavioral needs within our school district. So I wanted just to bring one more piece of information for you guys to kind of absorb and process and analyze. And again, I know that you've been receiving information. I know there's been bigger thoughts about receiving even more information. So it's just one piece of it. So all of our staff, ultimately, they help students academically and they also help with their social emotional development. For students that exhibit behavioral needs, there are teaching skills and curriculum being taught. And I want to preface this, this is mostly or all based off of elementary LRAS data. So when I'm talking on the slide as far as zones of regulation and fly 5, I'm talking about curriculum at the elementary level. Some of the other things we do for any student that needs the support, but I really analyzed on the elementary level because in the past 2 years, the middle school has had 1 restraint. The high school has not had any. So all of them have been, except with the exception of 1, all of them have been at the elementary level. So that's really my focus on this. So when we support students with behavioral needs, we give them various curriculum. Right now at the elementary level, we're using zones of regulation school-wide. And that's what there's posters up that kind of say like, how are you feeling? It's based off the zones of regulation. All kids see the programs we're using at. And then as part of a unified arts class that's taught by counselors, there's also a curriculum that's Fly 5. I think Sam has touched upon some of these curriculum components before. We also build social stories for students. We provide self-regulation strategies. We provide de-escalation techniques. We provide individualized student support plans. This might be a 504 plan, an IEP. This might be as part of a tier 2 process. It might be a student intervention plan. It might be as a tier 3 process. It might be a behavior support plan, which is written by our BCBAs directly. When a student is experiencing a hard moment and unable to self-regulate, given all the tools that we have already given them, staff are there to support the students in a safe and supportive environment. At a very last resort, that is when we go hands-on with students, either from a restraint aspect or a seclusion aspect to ensure the safety for that student and for all others involved. There is also a handful of individuals at each school that would go hands-on with a student. If you are going to go hands-on with a student and you're going to seclude a student, you have been through training, we use CPI. So it's not anybody within the school can all of a sudden decide that they're going to restrain or seclude a student. And again, it's a very last minute or a last resort. There's currently a very small cohort of students where restraints and seclusions are utilized. And communication in this is critical. So as a parent, it can be traumatic. And as a child, it can be traumatic if your child needed to be restrained or secluded. So we want to communicate and be transparent and tell them as much information as we possibly have. Sometimes in the moment, we don't have all the information, but we give as much as we can. So the day that we do a restraint or a seclusion on a student, the parents or guardians are notified that day. And then within 7 business days, they receive a letter and written communication that outlines more of the details, but they should already be aware of those details because they would have already gotten a phone call. The written aspect is just a follow-up to what we've already provided them with. On the slide, I also just want to give a couple examples of some of like self-regulation strategies and de-escalation techniques that we would use. So for some students, they might have sensory diets. So they might have to get up regularly throughout the day and they might need to get some deep pressure, or they might need to have some fidget tools, or they might need to just walk around and move their bodies to calm down. It could be breathing techniques. They could need maybe like a quiet corner because they're just trying to process and there's too much noise and they're just overloaded sensory wise with all the stimulations around them in their environment. Sometimes there's too much talking, so they need to go somewhere where there's less talking so they can decompress. So these are just some things that we do for the students. The next couple of slides are just definitions, and that's just in case people are unfamiliar with what restraint and seclusion means. There's also the RSA that gives you a lot more information that is linked into this slide about all the different components. It gets into again, what I was saying about, our duty to report it to the families, it gets into all those components as well. But essentially, if you are limiting the movement of a child's torso, head, arms, or legs, you are potentially restraining a kid unless it's like brief touching. So if you're trying to guide a student to walk down the hallway, sometimes you see it with like little kids, right? So like they're transitioning to school, parent dropped them off in the morning, they're just having a moment, but they're not really unsafe. They just want to like flop to the ground because they're not ready to go into the school building and leave their mom and dad. So you might be able to help guide them maybe with like an arm or the shoulder and kind of guide them to where they need to be if they flop to the ground. As long as that child still has control of their movements, you might help to kind of get them up a little bit. But as soon as that child doesn't have the free ability to move their torso, arms, legs, and heads themselves, it typically is a restraint. And then for seclusion, essentially, if you put a child in a space either by themselves or in a place where they feel like they cannot leave, so even if you're there and the child feels like they're not able to leave, it could be considered seclusion. And then there is some areas where it would say it wouldn't be seclusion. So one of the things that I want to preface on the bottom of this definition is it talks about an involuntary confinement of a child to a room or area with an adult who's actively engaging in a therapeutic intervention. So if you have a student that might have a behavior support plan, and as part of that plan, in a therapeutic intervention, it might say that the child should go to a secluded space, that might not actually be considered seclusion. So again, I mentioned that we're only looking at information at the elementary level. I think that as kids mature and developmentally grow, I think they're usually better able to regulate their own behaviors and keep themselves safe. So you might still see dysregulation at the middle school or the high school level, but it looks different. And a lot of times those students are able to control their bodies better, so that they're not becoming as aggressive as they might be at the elementary level where they become unsafe. Sometimes you might like bang your head against something and have to keep individuals safe. So I think as students, again, grow and mature, you see it less and less, which is why primarily we're seeing it at the elementary level right now. So I know it's been talked about and behaviors are talked about, and there's a lot of behavior information out there. Restraints and seclusions, while it sounds very traumatic itself, just having to restrain a child. Again, we try to do it as a very last resort. But if you look at the percentage of the population, again, it's a very small cohort of students. So for the 23-24 school year, it was 16 kids of our entire enrollment, which equals less than 5% of the population, 4.9%. And for this current school year, there are 13 students that have been engaged in restraint and seclusion for 3.9% of our population at the elementary schools. So again, very small cohort of students. Overall, there is less need to seclude and restrain students this year. You'll see I gave you information from September through December. It's color coordinated, so all the blue is last school year. All the green is this school year. So you can see that mostly the green areas are going down. So it's less students this year and it's less occurrences. About half of the students from last year are still represented in this year's data. And a handful of the students that are in that, a handful of those students have decreased their need to be restrained and secluded. So last year they might have had 20 and maybe this year they've had, that's a high number, but last year maybe they had 10 and maybe this year they've had 5 instances. About half the students from last year are no longer being restrained and secluded. So evidence that what we're all doing to support these students is in fact working, because last year they were struggling, and this year, with all the supports in place, they're doing better. A handful of the students are new to school, so they haven't been in school before. And then less than half of the students are students with IEPs. I have one more slide on this, and then I'll just keep all the questions that I can in everybody's faces. So this is breaking down the data a little bit more. So this breaks down restraints separate from seclusion. So you can see this information. And then on, so at the top, you can see again that the blue is last year, the green is this year. And then below that, you can see just a different way to see the total number. So our seclusions are going down, our restraints have gone up a little bit. And again, it's a very small cohort of students. Most of the reason for the restraints going up is there have been some increases, again, from a very small cohort of students of aggression. But the primary reason is elopement. So students are trying to run out of the building, and students at that young age don't necessarily know safety concerns of traffic and cars. Or it might be really cold outside and they're not wearing appropriate clothing, so we can't just leave them outside. So most of the, or not most, but a good portion of these situations are due to, again, the student trying to flee the building.
I needed one question, but you said it was an elopement?
Elopement is what we call it.
Running out the building.
Yeah.
Had that win for
It's gonna
that?
be a
It's
fancy
very
word
common
for
when you're talking
everything.
about restraints.
Escaping. Jailbreak.
So I just wanted to, again, just reiterate that, we are doing so much for these students. And again, when we have to ensure that they're safe, and we've exhausted all other, ways to go about that, you know, we have had to use restraint and seclusion, but, we are supporting students through behavior, support plans, intervention plans, access to the pond, which is the behavioral program at the elementary school, specifically designed instruction and social emotional learning. If the student has an IEP, various SEL curriculum, paraeducator support, social skills, counseling, teaming and planning through the pond program, SIP process, and the IEP team, as well as wraparound services coordinated by the social work. For some of these students, there are a lot of outside resources devoted to helping the students be able to learn how to better regulate their bodies, whether that's outside counselors or whatever that looks like, that come to the table and bring information to the school so that we can all work together and ensure that this child is again, learning how to regulate their behaviors and how to behave in school and outside of school. Questions?
Go ahead.
Number one, under the definition of restraint,
Yes.
that includes medication or voluntary medication. We're not
You're not doing that.
medicinally restraining students, are we?
You're not doing that.
Okay.
Not using mechanical restraints either.
We are not doing that. That's part of why it's up here, but I didn't get into that because we're not doing those.
And my next question. Seclusion, are these students, when they're secluded, always in the company of a adult? Or if,
So sometimes the adult still might be in that space with them. And sometimes the student might be on the other side of a glass door with the door shut, but we can still totally see the student.
and then it would-
Generally, there's always two adults, right?
There's generally two adults, yes.
in that instance, someone might hold the door. You wouldn't necessarily lock a student in.
No, we hold
We would
until,
never lock it. They're actually, the rooms that are used do not lock. So that if there's an emergency situation and people have to run off, the kid can get out.
And my last question, less than half of the students secluded or restrained have IEPs. Now, is there a percentage that might have a 504, or is that kind of the same?
I'm just trying to think back to what I Yeah, I think it's all inclusive.
None of them would have.
And typically, I've been showed, these students are so young, they haven't went through the eval process yet. So most probably will be headed down that road of an IEP. It's just that when you're K and 1, typically there's not that time to start to diagnose with IEPs yet.
Now, would these instances be some kind of flagging mechanism to then evaluate that student? Like,
It tends to start the process.
I will say there are some students right now that, various team members don't truly feel like it's a disability, just truly that they're so new to the environment and they don't know how to behave in an environment like this. And it kind of exhibits sometimes like you might see, you know, as a tantrum for like a smaller child, right? You know, they get so overwhelmed and they don't know what to do, and that's kind of their outlet. So some of it is just learning how to be in a more structured environment.
Gotcha.
With disciplines and stuff like that, I know it's very difficult to discipline students with IEPs and stuff like that. I know we want to try to treat everybody equally. But have we seen, I mean, we have seen an increase of disturbances for, you know, atypical students in the classes. I find that a lot of students, or I've heard from a lot of parents that, you know, Johnny's doing this sort of thing in the class and he's allowed back in the class. So why am I not allowed back in the class now? And I think it's getting to a point where it's getting very confusing for a lot of students, parents as well, because they're sitting there going, why? Do we have anything that we can start addressing that going forward? Because, I mean, I understand why, but like I said, a lot of parents, students don't understand why. I mean, you try to discuss it with your, you know, your kids, whether they take that or not, that's a different story.
So typically, and this is typically, if a student has an issue and we have to get them out, our goal is to get them back in the first time. If they have to leave the second time, they're done for the day. They don't go back. That's typically the general rule. So again, they're K1, 2, and 3. The goal is to get them back into the classroom so that they can be in that environment, so that they can learn that this is the expectation. Because also, if they act this way and they're not in class, guess what they're going to do every day? They're going to get out and they're not in class. Then they fall behind and then it's another instance. So again, we try to get them back in the first time, but the second time, generally the rule is they're done for the day.
And I can understand that for elementary school.
Yep.
But we have issues when they get up to middle school, you know, disrespecting individuals.
Yep.
Inappropriate language.
Yep.
Where these kids are definitely coming back in the next day, where a lot of students wouldn't be allowed back in because, well, they're either in school suspended or out of school suspended.
So you're talking like it's a get out of jail free card almost?
Well, again, I would say that
I wouldn't say
typically,
that, but
I would say, and again, it depends, and I don't want to get into the,
no, you can't get into
you know,
specifics, so it's tough.
but again, the goal is to get them back in for once, and then if it's the second time, they're done for the day. And then if they're acting up down here, they're out. There's rules and regulations about suspending kids too. We just can't say, see you later as quickly as we used to. The state looks at that data too. And I'm going to put it in a Friday memo, but you can see the Swiss data. Our out of school and in school suspension is almost twice as much as the state's average. So it's not like we're not sending kids home. We are.
Yeah.
But we can't, again, if a kid learns that this is an automatic ticket to get out and go home, guess what they're going to do every day?
Yeah, I went through it.
And then
My kid gets
it's on me again.
kindergarten.
I would love to say, and we just went this, you're not coming back. Eventually, there's a time of and again, this is so rare, so I have to take them back. I just do. And we have to figure out a new plan to figure out how to get that kid back in here. But ultimately, society's changed, and I will say Jeff Roy nailed it on the head. I get to go home and play video games all day long. What am I going to do? And so we're always like, there's that fine line of, again, if I can suspend a kid and it fix the behavior, that is awesome. I am done and I am happy. And that does work every once in a while.
But if that's what the kid wants, then
And so we're back to this whole thing of, I got to get, and again, I can say that, Zach Parker, Zach has done a phenomenal job here in this middle school of reaching those kids who, high school, I'm sorry, who was reaching those kids with those, and, you know, creating a place, an environment where, you know what, they're comfortable, but they're also producing work, you know, so it's hard to find guys like that or girls like that who can make that connection or make that difference. And we have one here in him. And it's one of those things where technically he's supposed to be certified sped. I'm like, nah, we're just going to let that go. We're going to figure it out. Jody's like, well, I'm like, no, Jody, the way he's making with kids and connections, we'll figure out that other aspect, you know, along the ways. So I agree with you 100%, but it's not as always easy just to say, you know,
I understand.
yeah, and that's the rationale, you know, and so. Yeah, if they get what they want, you know, another thing too is even a lot of kids just want to get in school suspension. They go sit in the room and don't do anything all day. I mean, as I said, you know, and you said it, you know, if they're sitting in a room and they're not being disruptive, I can lead a horse to water, but I can't make them drink. I can put the work in front of them. I can ask them 100 times. But if they're not going to do it, then their next option is they are being compliant, they are being decent. And then it's the option that they fail. That's where we're at.
Have we had a chance to celebrate the reduction of the repeat offenders from last year?
The students?
And by that, I mean with staff.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for asking.
You go ahead and do your celebrations and I'll do my celebration, right? It was going to be in my superintendent report, but through illness and injuries and all this other stuff, I've been spending more time to help down at the elementary just because they've been shorthanded. So naturally you start to develop relationships with those little guys and, you know, it is what it is. Yesterday I was following a young man around and their game, quite honestly, is try to find their friends, come follow me and let's start running. All right. That's just what they do. And, you know, we eventually can corral them, but we can't, you know, it's hard to say no. You stand in front of the door, but I can't block the door because then it is considered. She was going to answer for me. Oh, hanging. Yeah. So my young man who I was following around, and I can say 4 or 5 of my heavier hitters were out in the hallway and they looked and said, is he making good choices? And I said, no. Oh, and they turned and walked away. And that other young man was trying to get him to run and they all made good choices. And then that young man decided to call me a moron. I've been called worse, but one of those young men said, don't call him a moron. So again, one day I will take it and I will celebrate it. And I made sure that this young man, we were able to get him back in the room. I made sure I went around to every one of those young men that made the right choice and gave him the famous fist bump and a little shoulder. They liked to have a little handshake, but and that's all they need. Big smiles. And, you know, we were good. So that is a good day because I can tell you a month ago, it had been running and tackling time and figuring out, you know, moving, separating, secluding, the whole 9 yards, parent phone calls, the whole 9 yards. So we are seeing some successes. I can say that we have a couple other students who we rarely see now, but it seems like we get one good and there's another one that comes in and we start the processing it. That's the frustrating, not frustrating, but it is frustrating. I'm not going to lie. That's the hard work.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Like, one student might have 2 off weeks and might make up most of the restraints and seclusions. And that student has 2 really good weeks, but a different student is now having an off week. So, but at the end of the day, we still look at all those patterns and everything else. It's such a small cohort of students that I don't want to lose all the amazing work we are doing just because there's a lot of talk about the hard things we have to do, right? Nobody wants to go hands-on with a student. Again, it can be very traumatic for that student and it can be very traumatic for the family. And as we all know, there's a lot of trauma history within this community as well. So we certainly don't want to aid and add to that.
And then, right, again, John has said this because he and I have talked about it. That building does not help matters. And the fact that you can't close the door and not hear anything.
Yeah.
You close the door here. We closed the door here and all that sound went away. We didn't hear it anymore. Like you can't do that. Well, oh yeah, but it was minimized. It was minimized, but you can't do that at the elementary. You can't do that at the elementary because when there's a kid roaring and saying, "I'm running the thing," they're like, "Ooh," they hear it, they're gone. You know, so you can't close the door and minimize the sound. So that is an issue.
I do think it's very encouraging to hear the successes at the elementary school because obviously that's the starting point, and the 3 or 4 young guys that were making good choices will hopefully take that through and help guide other kids and say don't make good, make good. It's nice to see that there's a foundation being built. So it's very cool.
Set on those few slides.
So I would like to end with some success stories. I had asked the deans if they would be able to provide some success stories to myself. They all actually were able to produce, they produced anywhere from 3 to 5. They were all amazing. But I picked one from each school that I wanted to acknowledge. And if it's okay with all of you, I wouldn't mind providing some additional success stories, maybe for the Friday memo that can be shared out as well.
Every Friday, if you got them.
Oh.
So at the elementary school, we have a third grade special education identified students. So all of them together, they have averaged 116% growth in reading on their recent iReady diagnostic assessments and 73% growth in math. So I wanted to celebrate something that was academic based. We've been talking a lot about behaviors.
So just to clarify, when we speak iReady, this is their goal that they have. It's not the stretch. It's just the goal that they are.
It's the goal.
Their goal.
The goal.
Their goal.
Yeah.
Not their stretch yet.
No, that's fine. I'm just trying to get.
Yes,
Thank you.
you're welcome. If I do share some stories, you'll see a different one that does talk about the stretch. But this was just like, at the middle school, a specific student who utilizes the RAM program, which is our SEL program at the middle school level, struggles with self-regulation and conflict resolution. The student has shown an extraordinary transformation over the last year. So last year, there were 40 discipline referrals entered into our system that we use through Swiss, so they can be minors, majors. And this year to date, prior to Thanksgiving, there were 19 referrals. And since Thanksgiving, there have been 2. So again, the things that we are doing are working. And this wouldn't happen to a student that was restrained or secluded, but we're doing a lot of things that support the students. And then at the high school level, our high school includes our preschool, and they often get kind of left out because they're like their own little islands at the end of the week. So I wanted to bring some preschool information to your attention. So they have experienced an increase in the use of understanding AAC devices, which stands for Augmentative and Alternative Communication Devices. So if a student is unable to verbalize or vocalize, they would have an AAC device to help them communicate. So a lot of time it's for your nonverbal students, as well as students that might struggle with some of their speech and their learning. So they have this to help augment it. So the amount of time and communication that is needed to ensure consistency and efficiency of the tool is significant. There's been a lot of team collaboration and follow through in order to ensure the process is accurately documented and new words are put into devices. When we do have those devices, we control what we put into it, and it's all based off of what is relevant for that student. So student language at this point within the preschool for those students is flourishing. So I wanted to celebrate that. I just wanted to end the presentation by really just celebrating all the amazing work that staff are doing for the kids, academically and social, emotionally, for their learning. Because again, I know that there's been a lot of heavy behavioral data recently. So I just don't want the community and everybody to forget about all the amazing things we are doing.
The AC devices, are they like a little handheld or, like the size of a phone or?
So typically, and I know this got brought up during the budget process, typically they are iPads. Because iPads have accessibility to specific apps that are used that Androids typically don't work with. So it's usually an iPad that's in a case that's hard to break, and then we install apps directly onto the iPad.
Thank you.
It used to be like different versions and like very noticeable different devices and like square boxes, but as technology has evolved, most of it is just access through iPads, and then you have to purchase an app for every student. So if 3 students are using the same app, they can't all use the same device, and you can't put that one subscription onto each one. You'd have to buy 3 different ones.
Wonder why they do that.
It's all tailored to each student.
Oh,
And-
yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Anything else?
Thank you, Jody.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
All right. Next up. Title IX related policies, emergency approval. As a result of the new president and the administration's goals, New Hampshire School Board Association is recommending that boards change the following policies through emergency waiver of the policy of 2 readings so that we can get this done and not be in violation of the new requirements. I give her all that appropriately.
Yep.
So we have, the first one up is policy AC, non-discrimination, equal opportunity employment and anti-discrimination plan.
Question, do you want to have them vote on policy BGAA, policy development, waiving 2 readings?
Which one?
Before approving the policy, below the school board may vote to waive BGAA policy development adoption, the review in regard.
I believe what we've actually been told before, if we vote on it, it actually.
Okay, all right. I never,
By default.
say I've never done this anywhere else, but
Yeah, we can waive it by just going against.
Just by, instead of going 1 and 2.
there you go. There you go, done.
Questions, comments on AC? If not,
So
I'll entertain a motion.
when would these revise, or did you revise them or?
No, it's,
Well,
School board
the policy committee
association
looked
sends
at
it
them
to us.
through the New Hampshire School Board Association. And they recommended, and in essence, I think what they did is they just went back in
Yeah.
time
Took the old ones.
to go
Oh,
from 2020, I think.
I'll make a motion to accept policy AC, just AC.
Second.
Second by Steve. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Next one is, and this is the one I wasn't sure.
We need this one, Jen said.
We do.
Yep.
Thank you. Policy AC-R number 2, non-discrimination, equal opportunity employment and anti-discrimination plan, annual notice of contact information. Questions, comments on that one? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to accept policy AC-R number 2.
Second.
Second by Tony. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Next one is policy ACA, discrimination and harassment grievance procedure. Questions, comments on that one? Entertain a motion, please.
I'll make a motion to approve policy ACA.
Second by Steve. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Policy ACAC, Title IX, prohibition of sex discrimination and sex-based harassment, policy and grievance procedure. Questions, comments on ACAC?
I will make a motion to approve policy ACAC.
Second by Steve.
Who's this?
All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Policy ACN, accommodation of lactation needs. Questions, comments on that? Go ahead, Tony.
I'll make a motion to approve policy ACN.
Second. Second by Steve. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Policy GBAB or let me do that again. Policy GBAM, accommodation of pregnancy and related medical conditions personnel. Questions, comments on GBAB, AM? Why? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve policy GBAM.
Glad it's not catchy, Tony.
Second.
Second by Steve. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Next up. New revised policy, first reading. First policy, BBBF, student member of school board. Wording had been updated regarding invitations to all board meetings. Questions, comments on BBBF? Question, go ahead, Tom.
No, I was just
Okay.
making sure it was first reading.
All right. Anybody?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Does it mean like I know she left a little early. Is there like a place where it says they can, stay for 2 hours or something like that?
No.
Would that be reasonable or that's just understood that they can come and go? or-
Well, it's just, they're a high school student and I gotta.
Oh, yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's reasonable. They
Yeah.
should.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I'm
just
just wondering if it should be part of the policy so they don't feel obligated.
I will say, in years past, some students would stay the whole night.
Yep.
And others not. So it's more dictated by the student. And I think it's gotten a little more,
Transportation and all that. too.
liberal in the sense of, being less restrictive on the student to say you need to stay the whole night.
I just think it's a long time for a kid.
And this one.
Personally.
A long time for us.
Yeah, I think
They are
2 hours is a
missing
good
out
long
on this.
time.
Riveting,
I know,
riveting.
I know.
Policy discussion.
I know. If it's not riveting, she'd stay. So,
She said, I really want to see that DID, but I'm gonna.
Yeah.
Yeah.
she's like, I want to stay
No,
with
thanks.
Cindy till the end of the end.
Yeah. Flowers as you walk the door. Grab the Chromebook out of your hand.
No, I just think it's like the student personally wouldn't have to feel like that they're doing something wrong by leaving early, because I think that's reasonable personally. But you may not because you've seen them
Well,
stay.
I won't say what I feel, but I'm just saying that I've seen the full spectrum
Okay,
of the involvement.
yeah.
All right. Next up, policy DAF, administration of federal grant funds, and New Hampshire sample policy in its entirety. Questions, comments on DAF? All right. Next one, the infamous DID, inventory and management of assets. And again, this one is a New Hampshire School Board Association sample in its entirety because of it's new. Questions, comments on DID? Yep, okay. Next one up. Policy DID-R, fixed assets, we're looking to redact that. Questions, comments? All right. Next up, new revised policy, second reading. There are no changes to any of these. First one is JICD, student discipline and due process. I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to accept, policy JICD.
Give a second. Second by Joe. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Policy JKAA, use of restraints and seclusion.
I'll make a motion to accept policy JKAA.
Second, somebody?
One second.
Second by Tony. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Policy KDA-R. We're redacting the public information program. Get a motion to redact policy.
I'll make a motion to redact policy KDA-R.
Get a second.
Second.
Second by Cindy. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Policy KEE, website accessibility and grievance. In a motion to for policy KEE, please.
Make a motion to approve policy KEE.
Get a second.
Second.
Second by Cindy. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Next, strategic plan update.
Yeah, I apologize. I should have had two of these done. I thought I did it before I left, but I probably didn't. So I will have district-wide next one, what's enrolled for the next board meeting. So I apologize, but for this one, we have parent community engagement. With the support of superintendent, each school will collaborate with the community partner in order to increase positive involvement with our local school community. Currently at the middle school, we had Plymouth State University come in with the Tiger program. I talked about that, did a presentation for grades 4 and 5. Bullying prevention by Jason Tardy. The UNH STEM mobile came to the middle school. Haven's going to be coming to the middle school to promote positive relationships and healthy boundaries. Selt Forestry at LRES. They've increased the number of parent-student lunches. We've also increased our Seacoast Mental Health Center partnership by adding a therapist at LRES 1 day a week. At RHS, we were able to complete the challenge day. They came back. We had a DEA agent and opiate crisis and dangers of fentanyl. And Think Fast, they had a Think Fast assembly for distracted driving. Develop an overarching message to parents, the importance of communication. I know it's done. I know it's going out in the newsletter. I don't know if it's went out yet, so it's either out or it's going out. I've got to check with Jen on that. Create a monthly reporting template. The principals have completed that. Homeroom and RAM teachers, they were due to make the second phone call. This was the first one where they could do an email. I do have some data on that. About 50% of the parents at the high school opted out. I was very surprised by this. 70% of the parents at LRES opted out. I also think it was right around parent-teacher conference time. Right around that window. So they got a phone call instead of an email. And
They got it was
opted out.
They opted out of a phone call or
They opted out. They had to physically opt out, so they had to reply. So if they opted out of the phone call, they got an email.
And you're saying 70% opted for the email?
Email, which is surprising to me, but I think they just met with teachers, so they were like, you know,
I thought he was going the opposite way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was.
yeah. And again, somewhat at the middle school, 25% of the parents at the middle school opted out and wanted an email, not a phone call. Again, parent-teacher conferences just happened, so I think that when the phone rang, they just didn't bother picking it up.
But if you're saying only 25% only opted out of the
Yep.
phone call, that means 75% still wanted the phone call.
Phone call, but I don't think, again, there's not a lot of, what I want to say, connection with the phone call, because they, you know, just when it happens, you know, so, So that's where we're at on that. And they know that that has to happen every single time. So we'll be doing that again in the fall, letting parents know. Teacher shared classroom updates at least monthly. That's been done. I think that every month there's something going out from the schools. Students will cooperate to showcase their learning. Once again, we had the Deerfield Art Show, Drama Club presentation at the Town Library, Title I night at LRES. We had over 100 attendants. We have an upcoming art show at LRES. Title I night in February at the middle school, and career fair night is going to be coming up at the middle school. Raymond School District, in collaboration with its partners, will host family community events such as book bashes and STEMs. This kind of cooperates with the second one. The district has offered 2 parent community events. So we had Lynn Lyons and Screenagers growing up in the digital age. The Lynn Lyons one was very well attended. The Screenagers, not so much. Increased parental knowledge of the impacts of behaviors on school environment, providing parents, guardians, tool strategies to help improve school community behaviors. We've offered those 2 districts, and we reach out on those parent monthly things, providing updates to parents, and the principals do a nice job in their Friday memos. I've always putting a little, this is where you can go for help. This is what you can do. I mean, sometimes it does slide down the page, but the information is going out. And I will have 2 of them for the next meeting. And this one here is, I'm pretty much done, but I'll have, make sure I'll follow up with that.
Questions? All right.
Oh, Jen's messaging me. Did I screw up? It went out already, the newsletter. So my message on
I couldn't remember if how I'd seen it, so I didn't fit it in.
riveting reading, John.
Well, it was quite well done.
Thank you.
All right. Committee reports. Policy committee met. We talked about the Title IX that we've already seen, so folks already seen it, so. Anybody else for policy? I mean, policy, committee reports? All right, superintendent's report.
I mentioned the good news. We all met today as administrative team planning for the PD day. So that's pretty much all outlined. We took a look at the vertical planning. Now we're going to be start to taking, a lot of that has been done, but now we want to make sure that we're all taking a look at assessments and rubrics and making sure everything's aligned, looking at our rubrics, making sure that they're aligned at their quality of rubrics and our assessments. So that's basically going to be the work that'll be done on Tuesday. We're only been back 2 days, so really not much more than that.
Questions, comments for Terry? Thanks, Terry. Next up, correspondence or other? All right, Terry, manifest?
Total accounts payable, $472,904.44. Total payroll, $531,869.33 for a grand total of $1,004,773.77.
Has that been signed?
Yep.
Thank you.
I think I have a correspondence or other. We can go back for a second. So the 4th of July parade committee has started and they're doing their thing if anyone wants to get involved with that. But so I figured now would be a good time to see if any of the graduating class wanted to participate, the valedictorian and, you know, all those people. Because usually when we ask, it's already a week left in school and everybody's already got plans. So I figured now would be a good time if they want to be involved in it.
What day is the parade?
July 4th.
Is it on the 4th?
Yeah, I believe so.
Should have known that.
I'll have to confirm that, but I,
Should have known that.
or if any, you know, if anyone else, any classes or students or anybody want to participate in it.
Dress up as the Ram, Terry. I'm not gonna be around this year, so if you wanna.
I gotta ask you guys for time to go to Idaho for a race, so I don't know. Say no. Don't, Sherry, don't watch that. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't. And it's so much going
Any
on.
party to this?
Oh.
You dragging us into that?
Yeah, I think since you said it on public TV, we have to.
Birthday is April 3rd, which is a board meeting. Please have Johnny have that day off. I'm like, I'm not doing that, Sherry. Your birthday's the 2nd or the 4th. Sorry, hon. Not doing it.
Yeah, I had to go to a meeting on my birthday.
That's right.
All right. So we've got manifest, okay, approval of minutes for February 19th.
I make a motion to accept the minutes of February 19th, 2025.
Second,
Second.
by Cindy. All those in favor? Aye, motion passes unanimously. Need a motion to go into non-public, please?
Make a motion to go into non-public session, the RSA 91-A:3, Roman numeral 2, C and M.
Second by Steve. Joe?
Yep.
Cindy?
Yes.
Tony?
Yes.
Steve? Yes. Myself, yes.
See, this is the time. It was what, minutes?